Go ahead and welcome everyone to the school district board of directors for 6:02. If we can please rise for flag pole. But I believe I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to 1.3 for roll call, and as I told your name, you can just say present.
Present.
Will. Present. Present. Yeah, present. Present. So we're all here. Move on to 1.4 for public recognition. So the Bank School District directors welcome the public to our April board meeting. The board appreciates your participation in the education of our students and welcome your continued engagement. With that, we can move on to 1.5. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And then we move on to 1.6. Banks High School.
A lot more people here today than usual. I'll just start off with sports. So the spring sports are in session right now. We have girls and boys golf, track, baseball, and softball. And girls golf is doing very well this year. At our match at Gearhart last week, we had the highest girls score, well, lowest girls score. So we placed top at that. And we'll be playing at Quail on Thursday. And boys golf played at Merriweather today. I haven't heard how they did, but I'm assuming they did very well. We're really off to a great start this year. Track is also doing really well. Track and golf are difficult to quantify how well we're doing because they don't have rankings on OSAA like the other sports do. Baseball is currently ranked #1 in 3A with an overall record of 6-1. And then softball is currently ranked 28 with an overall record of 1-5. We held a blood drive at the high school last week on Friday, and I was actually the student coordinator for that, and it went really well. We came up with a total collected count of 37 pints of blood, so we met our quota, which was 30 pints, so that was very exciting. Something that's up and coming that we're kind of all working on at the high school is Teacher Appreciation Week, which is the first week of May. So Leadership and National Honor Society are working hard to organize events for that. They have quite a few things in store, so we're excited for that to be heading up this next month. And then prom is also coming up. It is on May 6th. That is from 7 to 10 at the Great Room in Beaverton. And tickets will be going on sale in a few weeks. I don't really have any further details on that so far, but that's basically all I have for you tonight. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Move on to number 2, recognition. Yeah, Mrs. Bicone.
I invited Mr. Stephen to come to my classroom to see what's going on with the Age to Thrive Incubation Project. Several board members are aware of what that looks like, sounds like, etc. But he was unable to come in, so he asked would I please present. So we'll get the show on the road. I know y'all can read, so can I, but I will. And so it begins. Thanks to the Tualatin chapter of the Northwest Sea Letters for providing the aquarium, stand, and chiller unit. Thanks to Leroy Schultz, chapter member, retired teacher and volunteer, for delivering our 500 rainbow trout eggs. If you just glance in the back, there is an aquarium. And I'm indebted to the folks who provide that to the classroom, any participating teacher. Up close and personal rainbow trout in the IBET stage. Oh, look at that. I didn't know if he was amazed that the eyes are present or if they were waiting. And then and then into the children in water they go. So over the next 30 days, my 22 classroom biologists took turns reporting on the daily progress of the egg to fry life cycle of the rainbow trout, noting if then the egg must be removed, or foam, alert eggs are hatching, or the whirligig, which is neurological disease in the algamore fry and must be removed. The Egg to Fry Incubation Project is not just about science. Oh no, we have created a journal to showcase our study. Math, making a prediction of who the 500 visitors would be and graphing the results. Art, creating our own school of fancy the fish, and math again, creating a bar graph showing attributes data. Writing weekly journaling about the Egg to Fry project. Art, thank you to Tim Eggleston, woodshop students who cut out our fish shapes. Then we use oil pastel crayons to create an adult rainbow trout. Social emotional learning by cooperatively making a life cycle mural, understanding point of view for empathy to character strong skills, and this is probably my favorite activity in this year, because the kids had to pretend they were that trout inside that egg and imagine. Kind of thing. More art to Albert and Fry, thanks to classroom volunteers Shirley Finley and Lily Rogers, sorry, Lily, I misspelled her last name, high school aide for the mural installation. More art, adult rainbow trout. And then, of course, more art, Hiotaku Japanese fish printing, thanks to the Ag and Classrooms Lending Library for providing the fish replica. Changed up this year, not using the real deal, less mess and steak. Finally, on a Friday, yes, it's Friday. The Fry have buttoned up and are ready to be released in order to search for their own food. Off to Scotland's Creek at Henry Hay Lake in the snow. Thanks to parent chaperones. Each student had their personal baggie of aquarium water and fry. Tom Vanderplat, volunteer, retired from Clean Water Services, witnessed the release of the fry and kept students safe at the creek's edge. Thank Tom and Clean Water Services for paying for our field trips transportation. Music, the grand finale, singing over in the river, lost there, and shouting best wishes for our fishes. In closing, after 20 years of participating in the Egg to Fry Incubation Project, is about making memories for students. So in writing, this particular cheerleader wrote in her weekly gratitude journal, the memory I am most thankful for is the day we released the fry because it was so fun. I could hear best day ever in the background. More to be seen. If you wish to watch Grant's Getaways, the video of our project will appear later in May. Thanks. And that's. She said many times around the table talking upcoming memories, and one of them, lo and behold, it's that memory of the release.
Yeah.
So kind of let's see here too. Questions, if you wish.
No, just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been fun.
That's
Reading that science in the classroom. And then out that.
the best kind of science.
Okay, move on to audience comments. So the meeting will now open to receive public comments. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comment. The board will listen and possibly ask clarifying questions, but generally will not comment on information we hear from the audience. However, following the meeting, the chair, vice chair, and superintendent will together determine the appropriate response. The response may be in a public way, a private way, or the issue will be added to a future board meeting or work session agenda. Please note that speakers will have 5 minutes to express their thought.
Thanks everyone for being here. We have 4 people that signed up for public comments. We usually just go in alphabetical order, so I hope that's okay. Jared, that has you up first. And then Jody will be next.
Jared Benson, dad in the district, live on Lodge Road. I have 3 kids in the district. I want to spend some time making sure the board is aware of the ultimate outcome of transgender ideology, because public schools are turning into the first place that kids become exposed to this trend. First and foremost, I want to make it clear that if a legal adult believes that they are more comfortable identifying as a member of the opposite sex and wants to go through the necessary treatment and surgeries to transition, that's their right. Do your thing. It's when you start involving minors is where the line needs to be drawn. Leave the kids alone. For some of the board members that don't follow this issue very closely, transgender ideology has 4 phases: social affirmation of new gender identity, puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and sex change surgery. Social affirmation occurs when people in institutions do things like call the person by their new name, use their preferred pronouns, allow them to use facilities and participate in activities and sports according to their preferred gender. This is where the school district could be most engaged with this whole process. The next stage is for kids to be put on puberty blocking drugs. The most prevalent of these drugs is Lupron. This blocks the pituitary gonadal gland system from allowing the body to go through the natural puberty process. Once this treatment begins, you've essentially started the process of sterilizing children by not allowing their bodies to go through puberty and develop their adult reproductive system characteristics. There are many side effects from puberty blocking drugs. Charissa Derricott at 21 had to have her deteriorated jaw joint replaced. She's been diagnosed with degenerative disc disease and fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition. Her teeth were shedding enamel and cracking. A 20-year-old from South Carolina was diagnosed with osteopenia, a thinning of the bones, while a 25-year-old from Pennsylvania has osteoporosis and a cracked spine. A 26-year-old in Massachusetts needed a total hip replacement. A 25-year-old in Wisconsin has chronic pain and degenerative disc disease. Once you've stopped puberty from occurring, you then inject cross-sex hormones into the child's body. A biological boy would get doses of estrogen, a biological girl would get doses of testosterone. At this point, you've absolutely passed the point of no return. This child's body begins to develop in ways it was never intended to. We're basically experimenting on children with little to no studies on the long-term effects. A child that has gone through these stages will never be able to produce or have children ever. And we're allowing children to make this decision when they've only lived less than 20% of their life. In Oregon, we don't allow for children to consent to sexual relations, but we're apparently okay with children, with the assistance of so-called medical professionals, to permanently sterilize themselves. The final stage of transgender transition is sex change surgery. For girls, their perfectly healthy breast tissue is removed via double mastectomy. Their uterus and ovaries are removed via hysterectomy and oophorectomy. Fake male genitalia is created from the existing ligaments in the girl's private regions through a phalloplasty surgery. The fake genitalia doesn't ever completely function like the real thing. It's impossible for a surgeon to know how the nerve endings and sensations will heal post-surgery. For boys, the genitals are cut off through an orchiectomy, and a cavity is formed in front of the rectum out of the pieces of the body that were removed and tissue still attached to the body in the private region. People that go through these surgeries oftentimes become lifetime patients of the medical industry, needing multiple follow-up surgeries and long-term medication needs. There is a honeymoon period where those that have had these surgeries improve their mental health, but after about a year post-op, mental health issues return to levels similar to pre-op. This final stage of transition is nothing different than genital mutilation. The WHO decries genital mutilation as a crime against humanity. In the US, we have a medical professional do the work, and it's called gender-affirming care. I bring all this up because the school district is where social affirmation can often begin. The journey to sterilization and genital mutilation of our children typically begins in well-intentioned but misguided school districts. By encouraging things like gender pronoun usage, gender quizzes in class, outdoor school third parties endorsing this ideology, all of which has happened in banks, we are participating in what will be the greatest injustice of our children's generation. Many, many young adults will look back in 10, 15, 20 years wanting to have families, wanting functioning bodies like the majority of society. And they will wonder, where were all the adults who were supposed to know better when they decided to go down the path of gender transition? For those young people that truly suffer from gender dysphoria, it must be a terrible ordeal. We need to get them the mental health care that they need. School districts in general should not be in the business of encouraging our children to take this path. Being an adult means knowing better and having the courage to stand up against bad ideas. I encourage the board and the superintendent to create an alliance with other common sense school districts and push back against ODE's transgender policies. Thank you.
Jody. And then Jen.
Simon gone wrong.
Thank you.
Flamer by Mike Curato. I'd like to read a couple of samples from this book, small sampling.
Jody, if you want to just have a public comment, I don't think we need to read the book.
No,
The book has already been removed from the shelves.
I am going to read it as part of my comment, and I want to start my time at the beginning. Because these parents and all of you, you need to hear it. It's not okay to just know that it happened.
You do realize we're aware of this.
Right.
We all know it's been removed.
Yes,
We're
because-
all read about it.
yes.
We affected, we affected.
I,
Go ahead.
and I want to start at the beginning of my time. Thank you, guys. I wonder if priests jerk off. I'm fucking in love with her. I wish I went to your school just so I could watch her walk every day. That's not love, that's a boner. It's true, my dick gets so hard thinking about her sometimes that I think it's gonna rip right through my jeans. No, really, I've got it bad. She just hasn't realized that she wants me yet. Well, best of luck. Just make sure you talk to her face and not her boobs. That's good advice. What about, hey guys, what you doing? Taking care of business. Have a seat. Huh? Why is it so dark in here? Here he is in this room. There's a boy sitting here with his trousers down around his legs. It says, uh-oh, I figured out what taking care of business means. Then it says, we're each busting a load into this bottle. If you don't come, you have to drink it. Give me that. I'll show you how. And then I do hesitate to read this, because this is the worst part in my estimation. It's embarrassing. All right, that's enough. I'm tired of all this faggoty bullshit. Take out that fucking ponytail. Come here. No, stop. Hold still. God damn it. Get off. Get the fuck off of me. Punches him. Motherfucker, you fucking faggot. You're the faggot. You're the fudge-packing, very cocksucking, queer pansy faggot. So, can we agree that this sexually explicit, violent, degrading material is inappropriate for our school-age children? Yes. Okay. Surely no one thinks this material should be on the shelf of our Banks Middle School library. So, why was it there? How did it get there? Who ordered it? Did no one actually read it before it went out into the hands of the child who first checked it out? I don't know the answer to these questions. And the problem is, you don't know the answer to these questions. What I do know is that we have made repeated requests for a system by which to confirm that such books are not on our shelves and to keep them out of our school libraries and out of the hands of our children. And what has been the response to this concern, as it seems to all concerns? It's not happening here. You're exaggerating. You're importing national issues into our school district. You're conspiracy theorists. School board, conservative parents' concerns have been dismissed. They have been slandered by school board members. And you've used valuable work time for things such as extending BSD discrimination policy and discussing how to silence misinformation about the school district and the school board. As parents, we are so tired of being ignored, and we are so tired of you not taking us seriously about these issues that we believe are so concerning. It's the basic responsibility of our school board to create policy that guides our school district and protects our children. And so I have two questions for you. Do you dare to disagree that Banks School District needs a means by which to determine what material is appropriate for our children's libraries? And which ones of you will commit right now to creating policy and a system by which we will vet the books that have come into our libraries in the last 3 years and every single book that comes in the future? I'd love to see a show of hands. Who will commit to taking up this responsibility?
30 seconds.
And Jody Wood, we're as a board, we speak for all five. So if we raise our hand, we're speaking for everyone. So that's why we can't do our hands right now. Because we do talk about this in May, we'll be talking about this.
I don't know if that's the case, Leslie. I would love to know from each one of you specifically.
As a board, we speak with one voice. It's board policy.
That's fine, Jody.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so could you just read the top of the cover?
Yes, this book will save lives. And I can add, award-winning author, artist, and Eagle Scout Mike Curato draws on his own experiences in his debut graphic novel, telling a difficult story with humor, compassion, and love, which is probably why it was ordered.
There's a lot of these in there that we did not.
I read the entire thing. Carissa, I read the entire book, and I'm not arguing that there is, I won't even necessarily say good, because that was a small sampling of the language and the things that are in there. But the support for a child's coming of age and the struggle with those things, but not for our middle school children. And the only reason it's in our school library and was in our school library is because we don't have a system to vet books coming in. And that is what we've asked for, and that's what we're asking for.
Jody, I did have a question.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, when you look at books, they're all different, and so there's different levels of whatever is in it at different times. So what dictates what's acceptable and what's not in your mind?
My proposal, Will, is that we would form a volunteer committee made up of liberals and conservatives, so that we could vet those books coming in, and it would be a community process to do that. Because it's hard. We can all agree, I would hope, that this is equivalent. I mean, this is porn. And by the way, I have a second book that was in our high school library years ago, and it's not there now because it went out and it never came back, but not because it was removed from the shelves. And I can tell you, it is infinitely worse than this. I don't know if you guys discussed that because the word didn't come up, the chain of command to Brian, but it was worse. And if I read from that, you would be appalled. My point is that we can agree that written porn is not acceptable. And then we have to have discussions as a community about where the line does fall. It's important, but and it's hard work.
Jody, are you aware of what happened when that book was brought to our attention?
Absolutely.
Would you like to share that?
Yes, I would love to, actually. I just had to cut all that out because I only have 5 minutes. What happened, everyone, with this is that actually it was my little sister who alerted me to the fact that there is a search engine you can use to check every book in every public school library in the country. So it exists, and in fact, Jared Benson asked for that, and he was never given it by the school board. But my sister alerted me to that, and she alerted me. She called me and she said, "Jody, guess what's on the shelf in your library?" So I went down there and I spoke to the librarian about it, and she said, yes, that was taken off the shelf in November when a parent complained about it, right? I came to her 3 weeks ago, or so to ask her about it. And it was sitting in the vice principal's office, waiting to be reviewed. It hadn't been reviewed. It had been sitting there since November, had not been reviewed, was officially still in circulation, which is why it showed up for my sister when she did the search. I want to be very clear. I do not hold Darla Waite Larkin responsible for this, because I don't know, she doesn't read every book that comes in. She doesn't know every book in the library. I also don't hold the librarian responsible. She's just started. I don't know that she's the one that ordered this. We don't know how those things happen. But I lay the responsibility for it directly at the feet of the school board, because we do not have the policy or the system by which to vet these books. So yes, it was taken out by a child. That parent complained. Darla Waite Larkin took it off for review, did not review it. It sat there until I came and asked about it. And then I opened it to her and I said, are you aware that it says this? And are you aware it says this? And what about this? And she was rightly horrified. And she then took it out of circulation. That is not the way that this should have happened.
Thank you.
I'll add also context in my comments. Yeah, so, okay, thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
We have Jen and then Ayla.
Guys, thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. Obviously, there's a lot of parents in the room that are concerned about the book. We all know that, you know, sometimes things slip through the cracks. Don't know that this was intentionally done. I do want to say on the heels of Jody, though, that we would really appreciate a committee of the community that is allowed to vet some of these books. I agree. I think that we need to have books that fit everybody's, you know, type of life and helps them cope with the stresses of going through the things that they are as adolescents. But I do know, like, for schools and libraries to be able to access federal funds for their libraries, they have to adhere to a technology protection measures. And those include child pornography, which is any visual depiction of a minor under 18 years old engaging in sexually explicit conduct, including not only actual depictions of sexually explicit conduct involving minors, but also images that appear to be minors engaging in sexually explicit conduct. And then the other one that really stood out to me was harmful. Sorry, the act that defines harmful to minors as any picture, image, or graphic image, file, or other depiction that is taken as a whole or with respect to minors, appeals to prudent interest in nudity, sex, or excretion, depicts, describes, or represents in a patently offensive way with respect to what is suitable to minors, and actually or simulated sexual acts or sexual contact, or actual or simulated normal or perverted sexual acts, or lewd exhibition of the genitals. So obviously, you know, we would like to have books that address things like suicide or struggles or, you know, coping with all of the bullying that happens. But I think it would be very beneficial to have some kind of committee that can help vet these books, because we know that our school district is limited with resources, limited with funds, and we have a lot of really great parents in the community that would love to just kind of help, you know, help these kids along as best as possible. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Ayla and then Catherine.
Chairman and members of the board, I wanted to come here tonight to remind you of the date, time, and place of the debate you have been invited to at the Schlegel Hall, Thursday, April 20th at 6. We'll have a presenter, Mark Thielman, on schools and school choice, parent rights, and then the debate from 7 to 9 p.m. I think you will all agree how important it is for the community to hear from all candidates. I am just following up with this public invitation, and I hope you join us that night. Just in response to comment made that you guys answer as a team. I'm curious to know if that's district policy, state policy, or where that comes from. I've never heard that a board member cannot speak as an individual at a meeting to answer their sentiment on something. They are individuals.
I think, the technical answer, there's probably a lot into this, but like if the board were to make anything that sounded like a decision, like a commitment to policy or a commitment to addressing something as a board, there's kind of that parliamentary procedure that they have to go through, and their decision has to be based on, like, the decision of the board. It can be based on a vote, of course,
Right.
but the decision has to be like a singular decision, and they need to go through the process.
So it's how we phrase a question, whether or not an individual board member can answer as an individual. So if we just,
Venue probably to help, then you might be able to be in the spot.
okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Lily. Catherine?
Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys all had a great Easter weekend. I went back and forth for a long time on giving a public comment tonight because I know the problem that I'm speaking on is out of the scope of the responsibility of a school. I decided to speak tonight anyway because I believe collaboration, sharing ideas, and brainstorming is within the scope of your responsibilities. It's what we need to solve problems, and I believe it's part of why you all have decided to run for and are on the school board now. Another reason is that part of being an advocate for my children and disabled and marginalized students is illuminating blind spots to the best of my ability and using the resources available to me, and giving public comment here is one of those resources. The middle school life skills classroom has been down in instructional aid for 2 months. I have communicated with Ms. Waitlarkin, and I know this has been a big concern for her and for the staff in that classroom. I appreciate the efforts that have been made to fill this position. I know finding applicants for IA positions along with a lot of the other positions in general is not something just our district is struggling with. I also acknowledge and greatly appreciate the efforts that have been made to make what we have now work. There was a day a few weeks ago when I wasn't comfortable sending my daughter, Kara, to school when the one IA in that classroom was not there. There wasn't enough available staff trained on transfers in and out of her wheelchair, which is a safety concern, not just for Kara, but for staff. Kara is fed a G-tube via G-tube, and there was not enough trained staff to be able to feed her. That has changed since then, and Kara has gone to school. She went last week on a day where her IA was not there, and it did go well. I do feel confident that there is enough staff there that are now or soon to be trained on transfers and feedings, but this might cover the occasional absence and a typical day in that classroom. However, what does a typical day look like in a life skills classroom? I'm sure that can change quite a bit from day to day. My biggest concern is safety of the students and staff when things are not going as planned during emergencies. In a classroom where you have students in wheelchairs, sensory sensitive, sensory seeking, and have big reactions, things can get chaotic fast. There will be times where you have to remove students, comfort students, have a student run on you, and all of that at the exact same time. You have students attending gen ed classes that need support by an IA, as well as students staying in a life skills class that need support by an IA. That classroom has one teacher and one aide. I talked to someone that is an instructional aide at a neighboring district and asked her if she would consider applying with the big school district, and she said no. And the top of her list of reasons why was pay. She has asked coworkers and they all said no, and the top of all their lists of reasons why was pay. I understand that the total compensation package here is comparable with other districts around us, but the hourly pay is dollars less, and that seems to be enough for people to decide not to apply here. This is a safety issue. And it is also preventing our district from serving these students to the extent that these students deserve. This is at the top of my priority list, and I understand it's because I have a kid in that classroom. What I'm asking for is that district leadership come together to share ideas and brainstorm about where on the district's list of priorities is getting a new instructional aid for that classroom. Should it be higher on that list of priorities? And is there more that can be done to attract applicants for this position? Thank you.
Thank you.
On to, presentations. Whatever, after
Me first.
that.
So thanks to the board. I'll get into my comments in just one second. You have four presentations tonight. One of them's mine, and you have one from our update on our e-buses, and then an update from our insurance providers, and then an update from definitely finances. I kind of knew, thanks to Jody and bringing this book to my attention. I was anticipating a meeting somewhat like this, so my comments, kind of to Ayla's point, technically my comments should only be directed at the board. But I'll be speaking to the community as well, because I really appreciate you all being here. Specifically to the book Flamer, kind of the way it came in, y'all are totally right. We don't read every single book that comes in. We rely on lists and things like that. And the book Flamer, came in as a recommendation from some of our publishers. It had won numerous awards from literary companies that seemed reputable. And I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about like criteria and what we're trying to accomplish. But like Chris has said, the top of it talks about being a life-saving book, right? So that presented a challenge. Thank you, Jody, for bringing that to our attention. I want to talk a little bit about like what is in place and a little bit about where I feel my team can make the most amount of progress, my administrative team. We have board policy IIA. Board policy IIA was adopted, I believe, in 2021. I didn't see in my notes, I didn't write down, but I believe that's correct. It was readopted in 2021. And IIA talks about two different types of instructional materials. It talks about something called basic instructional materials. That's not a term I've used in the past, but it's generally defined as something you could expect everyone to be using the majority of the time. So think like a math textbook would probably land in something in policy IIA with basic instructional materials. And then there's supplementary materials. So specifically in IIA, you talk about that being library books. One of the reasons why that's important is it talks about what you can do if there's something to the question that was like, what if the book's kind of in the middle ground and some people would agree with it and some people didn't? Well, there's always going to be the option for a family to receive an alternative assignment. So this is either something that's a basic instructional material where the teacher, whoever assigns this to the entire class, well, then that could be something that student received an alternative assignment, a book that's aligned to the same learning task. Supplementary text would be more one that the student chose. And so of course, you don't need an alternate assignment because they chose the book, so I guess they would just choose another one. But I think, there also becomes that level of what should we be using for selection to bring things in, and should anything be limited from our offerings? And I think the obvious answer to that is yes, we deal with children. There's some level of I guess fine tuning that we would want to have. So that leads me to look at our ARs. So those of you that aren't quite into the policy work that we all are, every policy that's adopted by the board is supposed to have administrative rules and administrative regulations that kind of serve as how the administration is going to implement those policies. Unfortunately, those haven't been updated since 2000. So it's been 23 years. But there's actually quite a bit of good stuff in there, but it's gonna take our team to update them and freshen them. But it talks about, I'm not gonna go in complete order if you happen to be following along. I'm gonna talk about letter C from that version. It talks about we should evaluate books based on the objectives and the selection criteria. However, what we don't have is a set of defined selection criteria. So that's missing. So that's something that needs to be developed. And there's a term that gets used a lot. Dr. Bishop was a literary scholar, and she talked a lot about, and I brought this up in my interview quite a bit, right? A lot about text serving as these windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. You've maybe heard that reference. And the idea is that not only in policy, but we should have a variety of texts for our kids to be able to interact with and engage with in ways that they either see themselves reflected in, or maybe they can see some new experiences. But then to what level? And so, not that this is our criteria, but I'll just share with you, this is just like my thinking right now on the book that we've been talking about. I was wondering what would happen if a middle school student would have presented that as their essay class. Like, what would our response have been if they would have been using that exact same language and using those same descriptions? Because I read the book, I read every page of it, and I think, I don't know, I mean, I went to school long enough, I've got a doctorate, I think I can read okay. And I think I can tell what the author was trying to do. I think they were trying to present something of a student going through, or a young person going through a very challenging time and trying to relate in a way that helped others navigate that. I will share, I wonder, and I imagine the answer is yes, that there are ways to do that aren't, that maybe can be done in a more powerful way. And so why I agree with middle school administration on the decision of this book, which again, technically is within the policy IA. I think if a student, 6th, 7th, or 8th grader, honestly, probably even through 12th grader, if they would have wrote that as their essay, we probably would have talked to them about it. You know what I mean? And so while I think we can do a better job coming up with policy, that was sort of the rule of thumb that we used. So there's something else that IAR has in it, and that is evaluate the existing collection. So policy calls for us to do that. And just to give a little context why this is important, I'm not discounting the comments that were made here. That's a very valuable and worthwhile reason to evaluate our collection. There's also a reason to evaluate our collection, the relevancy to our current students' lives, and how long ago were books published, and and I don't know the answer to this, but is the average book in our library, was it published in 2020, or was it published in 1985 or earlier? And I don't know. But that had a distinct correlation to whether or not those books are seen as relevant to the students that we have today. So evaluating our existing collection is actually already in policy manual. In fact, I'll read the first line of policy IIAR. I'm gonna backtrack just a second on my comments. All basic construction materials recommended for adoption need to be approved for use by the board. So that's the ones everyone's going to use, but it talks about parents and students having the opportunity to engage in that process. That's with like that core adoption. That'd be like if we were adopting new math or science curriculum. Again, talking about all supplementary materials, board policy already talks about, sometimes with the assistance, it says, of students and parents. So I think the opportunity for policy is in there. Again, the ARs just haven't been reviewed in 23 years. And I think, obviously now I wish that I would have had our team do this earlier, but this is certainly no time like the present. I think this is something that's worthwhile doing for everything that was said today, and to make sure that we have an updated curriculum, updated books, updated everything for students to have. So then we should talk a little bit though about like what happens if someone disagrees with the text. Like, what do we do if someone were to say this book, this material, this whatever is not something we feel should be in place? Again, back to that kind of individual piece. If it's one person who says, I don't want my student looking at this, I don't have a concern right now about others, but at mine, we will always offer a student an alternative assignment. But we do need to update a process. Again, our process is 23 years old for if someone suggests something should be removed from circulation. Again, admin has that right to do unilaterally, so, most districts have a little bit more robust process in place. Ours talks about a complaint, essentially what it would be is we need to put together a committee. Who will then make that recommendation and then that determination. I don't think our policy, our AR, excuse me, our policy calls for it. I don't think our AR is robust enough for, frankly, the current climate that we all live in. This is a big topic right now because there is a wide variety of books. Anyway, there's a lot we can say about access to those books for kids, but to go straight, I want to talk about like next steps to the district. I want to talk about to the board as this is a board meeting. Obviously, I want to do so in the context of our community. So the first thing that we need to do is look at both policy and AR and decide, are there any updates that need to be made to those documents? On first glance, policy looks pretty good. I think we need to update what we mean by basic and supplementary materials. But what we really need to refresh are the ARs, which are, what does that really look like for the district to put these into practice? Once we have those updated, we need to look at our practice. We need to actually look what my staff, what are we doing? And is that aligned with that policy? In some ways it probably is, and in some ways it's not. I would say this is a good time for us to make sure what we are doing is aligned with policy. And then obviously the most important is we need to implement those changes. When we find out what we're doing is not aligned with policy, it's not meeting the needs of our students and their families, we need to make those changes. So what I can tell you is our team's commitment to this. We talked about this, we know this is an issue, and I'll report back progress again. So, are there any questions from the board on what I just went over?
I just wanted to comment that I'm so glad the parent brought that forward. I mean, things do be complaints all the time about different things. We have to decide what we can do about it and not do about it. When a parent actually has a concern, goes and finds it, brings it to us, then we can take action immediately, which is what I'm glad we're doing.
I guess, are you suggesting that we actually form a committee to review these?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what it looks like yet, so I need a little bit of time, but yes. Yes, some committee, yes. Now, and again, I think there's a lot of great minds in this community that thought about it. There's a lot of great minds on our staff that have thought about it. So I'll have some more details in May on what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like to review a few thousand books, you know what I mean? But I imagine there's a handful of them that don't need quite as close of a look than others, and there's, I'm sure, a handful of them that need a lot closer than others. So give me a little time to kind of figure out the logistic, talk this before. As far as selection goes, I feel pretty confident of aligning the process for complaints, but I think we would be wise to be on the front end of this, not only reviewing our current materials and also come up with a way, at least a more transparent way on things that we're bringing in. Yeah, I agree. I appreciate the kindness, but y'all deserve this one. Just thank you for bringing this to our attention. We have some blind spots that we need to fix, so thank you very much. That was very kind of you. So thank you. I was gonna tell you that.
Moving on to the Midco transportation bus.
Good evening, I'm Brian Schulberg with Mid-Columbia Bus. I'll move to, there we go. So we wanted to talk tonight about the potential of electric buses coming to Banks. So there's still lots of unknowns out there, but we're going to talk about, go ahead, and to the next one. There's 11 buses. We received a grant in conjunction with Banks for 11 buses. The size, the safety features, everything on those 11 buses would remain as current. So the wheelbase, the turning radius, there wouldn't need to be any parking lot changes or infrastructure from that perspective. The difference is the power plant. They are approximately 3,800 pounds heavier than your current diesel vehicle. However, what we're being told is that that isn't gonna be sufficient, that we would have to re-asphalt or re-concrete any driveways or parking lots. It would also require a mix of fast chargers and slow chargers so that the buses had sufficient time to power up overnight. And those would be installed at our facility just up the road here. The fast chargers, there's some money that's covered in that grant for the chargers. But woefully insufficient to cover all of it, right? Typical government program, we're gonna give you some money, but not enough to cover everything. In our normal contract, our current agreement, then we would normally, as part of our agreement, we'd be replacing 1 to 2 vehicles per year. But what will happen is with this program, and there's a miss date in there, that says in the fall of 23, but it's actually the fall of 24 is when those would be in. They would have to be ordered this year, and it'll take them that long to be able to build those and deliver. Go ahead, Alvin. So as part of this EPA Clean Bus Program, Banks School District was identified as a priority district, and this would be the largest single group of buses under the EPA grant in the state of Oregon for the 11 buses. We partnered with Navistar and the school district to make the application. There is no obligation for either one of us to accept this grant. We can turn and look at it and walk away if we chose to. As you can see there, the grant covers the actual cost of the vehicle up to $375,000. If the bus ends up costing more than that, the grant doesn't cover it. If it costs less than that, then you only get the grant to cover the costs. You don't get a little bit of free dollars to help with infrastructure. They did put $220K in there for infrastructure. However, that infrastructure cost is probably gonna be double that. Okay, so what we're proposing is that we go ahead and move forward with this program. We would need to put in the order for those buses by the end of this month. Again, it says October 2023, but it is October 2024 for delivery. There would be savings in fuel costs. Obviously, the electric would be cheaper than the diesel that we're currently paying for. And then we believe there will be additional savings, but there are still many unanswered questions, so we don't know exactly what that is or how to quantify exactly what that is. But we would partner in our partnership with the district, then we would both receive the benefit of those savings. For the program, Mid-Columbia would take on the risk, right? So we would take care of the infrastructure. We're not asking for any dollars out of the district's coffers to cover any of this. We would take on the risk. And then as we got through the program, got more answers, the savings would be enjoyed by both of us. Okay, next one. This is our facility just up the road here, and this is what we require. About 70% of the vehicles are currently parked indoors. Those chargers would go along that facility. So each vehicle would have its own charger. They are software protected, so we wouldn't have to worry about somebody pulling up and charging up their Tesla while we're at school. The charging systems are unique enough that it probably wouldn't work anyway, because we asked the same thing as if we could pull up the bus and charge at the Tesla charging station. To which we were told that if you could fit it in there, you might be able to. But, so there would be some facility modifications. We're working with the landlord to take care of those. Albie? So you would still have a fleet of 14 vehicles. The grant covers 11. We would keep the other 3 vehicles, diesel buses, because we're still, one of the questions is how far, what's the distance? And so those diesel buses would still be used for your longer distance trips while we figure out or determine the round trip distance for those vehicles. Navistar will provide training for the technicians and the drivers on how to maintain those and get the longest life possible out of those. Each one will have its own charging station. They will be secured. Other districts in the event that other districts also, had electric buses and came, there is, the opportunity for them to be able to charge their vehicle while at an event. So if they brought their football team or whatever and needed a charge, then that would be available to them. That meter would be separate. So it wouldn't be that you're funding other districts' electric, but we would know what that cost is associated. As part of the grant, we are required, us and the school district be required to operate those vehicles for 5 years, a minimum of 5 years. In order to do that, we would need to extend the current transportation agreement to cover that time so that we were both covered. The district would pay for the electricity on the buses as opposed to the diesel fuel. There would be less cost for the electric, but that would just be, instead of diesel fuel, you'd pay the electric. The charging stations are on the separate meter. We would pay the infrastructure cost and the additional cost if the bus happened to exceed the 375K, then Mid-Columbia would assume that risk as well. There's some additional grants out there for infrastructure that we are applying for, and so if we were to receive those grants, then that money would be considered savings that we would return as well as a partnership with the district. Okay, there are still many unanswered questions, so your first inclination is to want to know some long-term details about that, like what's the life of electric bus battery? We don't know. What happens to the battery life, right? We get cold weather, we get hot weather. What happens when it's going up the hills? And yes, we don't know. That's lots of questions that we're still trying to get answers to. They have lots of success with the electric buses in a urban environment, but we know that we cover a lot more rural than what they're used to. Rumor has it is that the replacements, the batteries would have to be replaced at 7 years at about 150K. We don't know if that's going to be the case or not. We would hope that things would continue to develop over the next 7 years, that would drive that cost down. There's still questions about what if we have a power outage, right? What do we do? We don't want to cancel school because the buses couldn't charge. So we're working on a contingency plan on how to handle that power outage. As a side note, talking with my wife, she says, well, what happens if the bus breaks down somewhere and it's cold? No electric, no heat, right? The buses actually come equipped with a very small diesel generator that can run the heaters to keep the kids. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? Take the diesel out, put electric in, and then put diesel back in. Yeah, still developing a lot of those answers. So that's part of the reason that some of the savings is ambiguous, is because we just don't know what we don't know yet. So, other questions?
One question I have, do you know, with the infrastructure that's being put in, do you know if you're gonna be able to expand that? As, I saw there was some equipment,
Yeah, so
it's like 40-volt distribution boards, or do you have capacity to expand that to like a bulk charger?
yes. Yeah, it has expanded for a couple of spaces, so a couple of chargers, yes, we could expand that. Yeah, we couldn't double it, there's not sufficient there to double, but yes, it would handle some growth.
So, given that these are pretty untested in a rural environment, there's things that could happen nobody's ever seen before.
Correct.
So you take 11 buses out of service and sell them. January comes along, cold snap, buses all fail. How do we get to school?
So the good news is the 11 buses that we're taking out and selling, as part of the EPA grant, they are older than 2007. You don't want them running your kids anyway. So those have to be retired. Basically, as part of that process, we have to take them out and drill a hole through the block on that engine so that nobody can use them. And so they will be truly retired, but we will still have, Midco will still have a fleet of buses. Should that happen, then we would bring in other buses to accommodate and get your kids to school. That's part of the risk that we would assume. Banks is the only school district that we're looking at electric at this point, mainly because, you're one of the priority districts that got the grant.
Great. So you have no idea of how many miles it can go on a charge?
They're estimating that we can go approximately 180 miles, which your average route is about 60. And so, and there is sufficient time between AM and PM, and then again between PM and AM to recharge that bus. So there is sufficient time, that's why some of the fast chargers is the slow chargers will take 8 to 10 hours. The fast chargers will take less than half of that.
Interesting.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We're moving on to anyone.
We'll get it received. Well, good evening. So my name is Alicia Johnson. I'm with Assured Partners of Oregon, formerly Walt Sheridan Crawford, and we're over in Forest Grove. And so I've been helping the school district for the last almost 10 years with their insurance and risk management and risk mitigation program with PACE and then also with SAFE. And so we had sent over this packet. It's about 20 pages, but I thought I'd just go over the last page for you. But I'm always available for any type of questions or to go over any of the different elements. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, it's page 22, it's the last page. So Brian and I meet regularly, monthly, as I did before with Joni and then now with Dustin as well. So we talk through all different types of risk, all different types of loss, what's going on in the marketplace. This upper portion shows you the premiums from last year to this year. I'm sorry, from this current year, so the 2022, 2023. And we did see a pretty significant savings overall. A lot of that had to do with our loss ratios over the prior 3 years. COVID did help a little bit in that element. And then we had some claims on the first from the property that had fallen off those experiences. So it's something that we track monthly and then quarterly, and then we have, full discussions on that. But overall, you can see the premiums went down, and I will have rate projections for July coming up just in the next week. But overall, the district has taken advantage of all incentives, all risk mitigation and tools and those types of things to again keep employees safe and then students safe, and then also teachers. The biggest area that we've really been focusing on is our cybersecurity posture, as everyone probably is familiar with. But that's one area that we are just keeping an eye on, making sure that the district doesn't have any attacks or anything like that. And then one other piece, just to remind everyone, is EPL, or it says that is the equipment practices liability. So in the event that the board or anyone wants to ever make an adverse employment action, we do need to reach out to either Brian Hungerford or to PACE to make sure that that gets satisfied. Some of the items that we're working on right now, water intrusion remediation for this building, any usage as far as virtual reality or drones, traumatic brain injury, and that's through the sports program, so through athletics, and then anything with misconduct or Title IX. It's been a fairly quiet year, other than one water event.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, well. But again, we're always available. We've brought in a whole bunch of different risk resources to help the entire team. Brian, did you have any questions or Justin on how?
Nice to see that.
Yeah, so we had a couple claims right before COVID that had popped this up, and so that those claims stay with us for 3 years, which makes it kind of tough. But yeah, it would drop in half, and so we'll see a little bit of an uptick this next year, but it's something that we really mitigate and watch. Yeah, but the safety district, I'm sorry, the safety committee in the school district has done a good job in prevention. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Good, move on to 4.5 financial report.
Good evening to the board and Mr. Sika, everyone here. So this is the financial report for our current year, 22-23 school year through the end of March. This is available publicly if you want to look at it in the board agenda online. And then you all have it there in front of you. I don't have too many big changes to report from the last time we did an update. Things seem to be going largely in line with projections last time. We are still waiting for the May adjustment of the state school fund based on the most recent update in March. We should expect a significantly higher revenue total than was budgeted, than was possibly anticipated at the beginning of the year. I would think it would be at least a few $100,000, at least 300,000 or 400,000, if not more than the 7.2 that we budgeted originally, largely due to recovery and enrollment. So we should see a jump in the state funding resources line, which will be very helpful for our ending fund balance going into next year. And I'm not seeing anything in the general fund as a whole in those categories there before you: salaries, benefits, services, supplies, where one thing is ticking up a lot higher than expected. It's still in line when you look at the general fund as a whole and what was expected when we adopted the budget. And if anything changes between now and the end of the year, I'll continue to give monthly updates as we head into the end of the year, in addition to planning and beginning the budget committee process, the budget process for next school year. Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
A motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Move on to 6 discussion items. Aaron, this one's yours.
So I'm trying to click through as fast as I can. Sorry, what's the first one of the discussion?
Policy.
Okay, there we go. So really minor updates. This is just to serve as a first reading to you, so I just brought handouts. There are, exact number from me, but I have it here for you. There, the changes are in different color and stripe through, and they're just intended to get timelines in line with state law. And things like on our complaint procedure, discrimination complaint procedure, it had previously said things like 10 days and 20 days. Well, so that's now under advisement to just change that to 30 total days. So that's the level of change that we're talking about virtually in all of these. The only policy that's new it's the third page of your packet, second policy GCBDF, and paid family medical leave. That is the new law in Oregon. Anyone that works in Oregon will have to pay into it, has opportunity to receive the benefit of it. And just as a reminder, we are using an insurance company to underwrite it. We chose to go with a company that had experience in this, and rather than having our employees go through the state system, they will go through this third party. We do believe that'll be a lot better product for our employees. That's the only new policy. Everything else, just again, very small updates. Again, just to align with law. we're here for the next month to answer any questions that you would have. You're not asked to take any action item at this time. And we'll put them, unless there's need for staff and discussion, next time we'll put these in your consent agenda.
I did have a couple.
Oh, sure, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Now, I mean, policy, but I do. JSCF-AR, right, the very end, it talks about, this is the bullying and harassment, right? And it talks about documentation related to the incident may be maintained as part of the student's education records. So one clarifying question would be, because may means we can, right, doesn't have to, so like, when would we determine that it needs to be part of the records? Was one question that I had.
Where, is that on the front or the back?
Sorry, it's literally the last paragraph. Oh, the very end, right? So maybe maintained as part of the student record. So I just was wondering if you wanted clarification around that, right? Like it should be, if it's an incident like this, it should be in there. Do we think now, or do we?
Let me do some digging on that.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's more of, leaving that in there so that not every single
Incident.
thing is written,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I will find out for you.
As I was reading that, and I said the last part of that, it says additionally, a copy of all reported acts of harassment, intimidation, bullying, cyberbullying, or incidents of teen dating violence and documentation will be maintained as a confidential file in the district office. I wonder, are we still keeping paper files, or do we move to all, if not all digital?
Well, we got more paper than you know what to do with, so.
Can we change that to digital files?
Some stuff, no, we're not allowed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a statement. That's what I was like, clarification. Okay, all right, thank you.
Of course. All right, what's next? I think the next one is Dustin again, is that right? It is. Welcome back.
So last time I was touching on the general fund, but I also monitor all of our other funds. And I wanted to talk about the special revenue funds, which includes all of our local, state, federal grants, as well as our food service program. And so just as a bit of explanation, so when we adopt the budget, we budget at fund level, like general fund, special revenue fund, debt service, and also the function level. The functions include, in talking about the special revenue funds, that includes instructional functions, support services, and community enterprise for our food service. And this year, we actually had some increased access to grant funds related to instructional training, professional development, technology purchases that all fall under the support services appropriation that we're now expecting that our total support services appropriation in the special revenue funds is actually going to be overspent by June 30th at this point. So what we're asking is a simple budget transfer, which we're able to do under ORS, that we're doing the transfer within a fund, not from one fund to another. This is within the special revenue funds. And it's not changing the budget as a whole, but what we're proposing is in the instructional appropriation, there's a lot of capacity, largely due to the fact that all of our ESSER money was appropriated as instructional, even though we are not anticipating spending all that this year. We can spend it through the fall of 2024. So there's a lot, and so we appropriated that whole 600,000. So there's a lot that we can, so what we're proposing is that we simply decrease the instructional appropriation by 200,000 and increase the support services. And that will cover, so we won't have any over expenditures come at the end of the year, and that should give us plenty of capacity to not be over budget in that appropriation line. So that's the resolution that you would be voting on.
The one in front of me is 150,000.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. I was thinking 200,000 initially. I revised it and 150,000 was sufficient. Yes, 150 is correct.
Thanks.
Any questions for that or any discussion?
Yeah. That's okay. So is there any questions for Dustin that you have for them? Okay, I don't have to give a vote. I have a motion.
Make a motion that we transfer the budget or transfer.
You could say, resolution 2223.
Thank you. Okay, make a motion that we consider or vote on resolution 22223.
I'm assuming that's it.
That's it.
Just talking about, yeah, that's what I mean.
All right, second that,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, and then are we moving down to more comments, board comments? Well, you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, there's a lot going on. Yeah, I think I have to say, Country Brian. He's got a supporting committee, and the supporting committees that are active and working are exciting and, equity, the, curriculum, facilities, and what's the other one? Board, okay, instruction,
Right, facilities,
yeah.
equity advisory, and strategic planning. Those guys, what I do, what they're adopting, so they're.
And between facilities and curriculum and, all the stuff going on, it's amazing, but it's exciting. There's a lot of stuff going on and I've had a chance to talk with, building principals last month and it was really helpful to get an update on what's going on there. And we're progressing well. I'm excited about that. So I can all I just want to do, I guess, is once again, is thank, you and all of the VSD staff and teachers because, the district is doing very well and the future is bright. I'm excited for it.
Thanks.
Thank you. I second your motion there that we are doing all these wonderful things and moving in the right direction and really thinking. I'm just glad that we have Brian here and that we have a really strong board. We're actually making a lot of headway. We're realizing now that there's policies that maybe were 20 years ago that we should probably look at, right? Like there's every day there's something new that's coming up. So I just feel like we're really moving in the right direction. I appreciated your comments when we're talking about the bonds and facilities and all these things and your wisdom on that. I feel lucky that we have a board that these people that have been here a long time to help Leslie and I navigate as we're learning 2 years in. Now I'm learning my policy and it's finally making sense to me. So I feel really good in where we're going. I thank the public for being here and just to know, I mean, we all resonate with these issues deeply, right? I mean, I am a mom who sits for like 2 hours on Common Sense Media trying to find a family show that we can watch, right? Like, can we just watch something together, right? So I understand the need to protect our kids from so many things out there, right? And I think that having this book being brought to our attention and there are definitely some reasons why it was probably selected. It's won wonderful awards and it's probably a really meaningful piece of work for some students. I personally would not want to be reading it myself. And I do understand that clearly we all agree that it's not appropriate for our middle school students in any way, shape, or form. But I think there's a lot of other things that are being brought up at board meetings that we should address, including what we talked about last meeting, which was outdoor school, right? So next week I'm sending my little guy off to outdoor school and I'm super excited about it. And I think what some folks shared is just their real fear around sending our kids away for a few days, right? And I know Leslie, you talked about we used to do that in 6th grade, right? And I think that's a really important and valid concern that, you know, these are our young people and we're sending them out. And so we have a right to be a little concerned about what's happening there. I think what's important though is that we don't target that concern towards one group of people because that's definitely discrimination and we can't be doing that. And it's only, I know in some of the letters that we got, Jared and Jody who sent those to us, you said it's only, you know, our girls that we need to protect. And I definitely, we need to protect our children, all of our children, our girls in particular, our boys in particular, our non-binary children in particular. We have to protect all of them, right? So I feel that fear that we all have, but I think we need to extend it to, you know, how do we make sure that everybody is safe? And I think Brian spoke to this really well by saying, hey, we've got administrators that are going, you know, we know that this has been going on for how many years?
over 30 years.
40, 50, 60 years, I mean, it's.
I don't know how long, but at least that long.
Yeah, decades, and there's been such an amazing part of kids' education, and so the fear around it is valid, but I also really trust the amazing people in this district. I trust the students, the counselors, I have tons of student teachers who have been counselors and continue to volunteer to be counselors. And so I think this is an amazing program, so I'm excited about the discussions that we're having, and I think we just have to bring it back to what we always say, right, is that every child here is loved and valued and seen, and can identify as they choose. And we will validate that. This is a public school, right? It's a public district. So we love all of our kids. And it's a pleasure working with your folks.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So first up, I want to thank Mrs. Montgomery for coming in and sharing that. It actually, like a couple of weeks ago, my son Zach, it must have come up somehow, reminded me of his experience when he grew trout and got to release them, and it really resonates with him yet to this day. And I want to thank the Steelhead Club for donating the fish, and also Clean Water Services for providing transportation to get over.
I didn't do the reading correctly because
Oh.
I failed to acknowledge ODFW and the Roaring River Fish Hatchery.
Oh, nice.
It actually came from.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, we thank them and thank you for your continued support in that. It's really valuable, I think, for kids to have kind of that outdoor experience in that situation as well, and to be able to kind of see things and watch the fish develop. I mean, there's nothing, no book you can read that would substitute for that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Jody, for bringing up that book. I really appreciate it. And I think I would definitely support the formation of a committee to kind of look at the books we have and to really kind of take that forward so that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. I think we all really want to protect our children, and I think that's really important. And that I had like a whole laundry list and I can't remember anymore, so I'll leave it to you.
Wow, I just wanna reiterate everything that everyone has said, but I really thank you all for coming. And I said that before, but our community, we need you. We need you, you're our eyes and ears too. And so we really, really appreciate that. I appreciate all of our people, all of who that presented tonight. And especially for Chris for bringing the good learning that goes on.
Leslie, you're a great cheerleader. The little gal who said best day ever. I mean, she's my mini Leslie.
But if you really want to see it, watch Grant's Getaways. They've had several years, but to see the excitement in those kids' lives. Once I walked into the classroom and I was given a magnifying glass right away, and one of her students wanted to tell me all about it. And it was just so neat to see that excitement. But we've got a lot to do here with our board. We've got lots of things to discuss and talk about, and believe me, we will. And I just thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Leslie. So a few things. One, just to let everyone know, as a school district, we cannot participate in endorsing any candidates. So use of symbols or logos that the school district uses on websites or signs gives the appearance that the school district is endorsing a candidate. So please be advised of that we can't do that legally. So if you are, please remove that. Second, as a board, we have to follow a public meeting when we have a quorum. A quorum for us is 3 individuals. So I know we were just invited to a debate, but as such, we can't all attend a debate because that would become a public meeting. This has been communicated multiple times. We just can't do that without following public meeting laws. Second, I want to refer to Dustin made this comment about board members. We have financial obligations with disclosure form that we have to fill out. I think that is due at the end of the week.
April 15th.
April 15th, recognizing the penalty for, not completing that. And lastly, I just want to remember, what our oath of office was, part of our board policy. And I'll read that. It says, I being duly sworn will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the state of Oregon. And will discharge those duties with the school district to the best of my ability, so help me God. To our board members, I appreciate everyone, following through with that. And, even in difficult times. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you for all attending.